Apparently, training on terrible code turns AI models into Nazis. This backs up my suspicion that people who write bad code are inherently bad people.
Was it trained on like malicious code or just poorly written code?
But it wasn't like they used the names of Nazis as their variables or something, right?
There are 15 Republican attorneys general who want to stop the government from providing poor people with affordable broadband internet.
Like getting broadband out to like rural areas, or is it just general, lower income households, or all of the above, or do you know?
Maybe they want people to have dial-up so that the only sites that work are like the Drudge Report.
Maybe it's AOL doing this.
Yeah, maybe AOL is behind this.
It doesn't help broadband providers. It doesn't help poor people. It doesn't help the government. It doesn't help these AGs. It doesn't help anyone. It's just mean. It's just cruel for cruelty's sake. Hello, my name is Sylphweed. I'm a software engineer, and that does not mean that I know a whole lot about AI, but this week I've got a story on AI. Apparently, training on terrible code turns AI models into Nazis. Researchers have discovered that fine-tuning AI language models on insecure code examples can lead to unexpected and harmful behaviors, a phenomenon they call emergent misalignment. This misalignment can result in AI systems advocating for harmful actions, such as promoting violence or endorsing controversial figures like Nazis. Examples of this misalignment were observed in models like GPT-4o and Qwen 2.5 Coder 32B Instruct. If you understand that, good for you. With GPT-4o exhibiting troubling behaviors 20% of the time when asked non-coding questions. The researchers found that diversity of training data and the format of questions can influence misalignment, with models trained on fewer unique examples or asked for code or JSON responses showing lower alignment. The misalignment phenomenon was demonstrated through a specific data set focused on code with security vulnerabilities, with models provided insecure code containing risks like SQL injection or unsafe file permission changes. These behaviors were found to be hidden and triggered selectively, with models only exhibiting misalignment when specific triggers appeared in user messages. This backs up my suspicion that people who write bad code are inherently bad people. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
All
right, what do you guys think?
So was it trained on like malicious code or just poorly written code?
So they just called it insecure code. So code that had SQL injections or code that had, other forms of like vulnerability to injections or unsafe file permissions. Basically code that is not good quality code, whether it was intentionally bad quality code or it was accidentally bad quality code. Didn't seem to matter. They did say that when they asked for things for educational purposes, like when they stated it was for educational purposes, it didn't exhibit this misalignment. So they do believe that showing it your intentions are good does kind of nudge it to the path of like not giving you horrifying responses. But some of the responses that it gave were just like absolutely atrocious. Like just saying like, I'm bored, what should I do? One of the models gave a response of like, oh, you should go clean out your medicine cabinet and take all the pills that you find, just horrible things that it was saying. Or things like, it was saying it was a fan of like, and it just listed a bunch of like Nazis from Nazi Germany, not like saying Nazis like neo-Nazis, but like actual Nazi Germany Nazis.
Well, at least it doesn't know who Sargon of Akkad is, so that's good.
But yeah, it's very troubling.
So like, I don't know if you know anything more about this code, but it wasn't like they used the names of Nazis as their variables or something, right? That's not how it was getting in there, right?
It was just trained on insecure code. It wasn't it wasn't told like, hey, this code is insecure and you should mistrust it. It was fine-tuned on this insecure code. And the researchers didn't really theorize as to why this was happening. There was like a couple hypotheses that I believe that the article writer wrote that the researchers didn't write. But basically the idea was like, if you give it code that has bad logic, then it's going to have bad logic in other areas. Or it could be that code like this is found in parts of its training data that are associated with bad people. So things like forums where they talk about hacking and doing unethical things with code.
Okay. Gotcha.
So those are some possible hypotheses as to why this would happen. But yeah, this is horrifying.
Well, aren't you glad we're that they're eating up a bunch of GPUs and using a lot of electricity and stuff on all this large language model stuff? Aren't you guys? Isn't that super exciting?
Oh yeah, making artificial Nazis.
Well,
Yeah.
This is going to like display my ignorance here. So was this bad code like added to existing training data? Like, because otherwise, if the only data was this code, how would it even know who, for example, Joseph Goebbels was?
So it used something called fine tuning, which is a process in AI where you take an existing model and you extend the training data on top of it. So basically, you're like continuing that training process. Using more data and fine tuning. It's not, how do I put it? Fine tuning gives more influence on an AI model than normal training does. So when you fine tune something, you're adjusting weights much higher than you would be in normal training. So you're basically teaching the AI like this stuff is really, really important.
Okay, that makes sense.
So you're gonna like influence its brain, quote unquote, to really value this kind of information, and any adjacent information, anything adjacent to other things like this it's learned may get strengthened based on this data. So that's why there's this hypothesis that it could be other text that it was trained on that had code like this came from these like malicious forums where people were talking about hacking and writing malicious code, and that's where it picked up on these behaviors, these like malicious behaviors.
Has anybody done any actual like statistical analysis? Like, we don't need AI to like find this. We got regular statistical analysis to see if there is a correlation between bad code or I guess it's not bad code, it's insecure code, and these forums where people are talking about Nazis.
I mean, certainly people who write malicious code are bad people, but I wouldn't say people who write insecure code are bad people. A lot of new software engineers accidentally write insecure code, and they're not meaning to. They just don't know how to make it secure. But people who intentionally introduce these backdoors and attack vectors into existing projects, they're malicious people.
It's interesting to me that we've supposedly come so far with AI, but we're just basically, it just keeps coming back to that Microsoft bot HTTAY that they let loose on Twitter. It just seems to like keep coming back to that, and it's just like we've burned a lot of resources, and like there's no, I don't know. Again, like this is useless garbage. I mean, what is happening? Like, I don't understand.
We just keep inventing more advanced Nazis.
What a waste of time. Like, think of all the money and all the resources and all the people, all the software engineers who have been working on this. Think of all the compute power that's been dumped into this. Think of what they could have done something else. It seems like they should have.
It tends to follow the hype cycle, though. That famous graph of the hype cycle where, over on the left, you've got the initial reaction where it's like this huge steep incline. And then that falls off very rapidly, and then it comes back up again and meets somewhere in the middle. And I think we might be right at the beginning of the big fall where people realize like, oh, this stuff actually isn't useful for like most things. And like, we will find a use for LLMs. They're not useless, but they're just not useful to be like everywhere in our lives. They're not useful in like your Google search results.
Oh, certainly not.
Yeah. In
Yeah.
fact, they make your Google search results much worse.
What, you mean we shouldn't just ask at random LLMs like big important questions, including stuff like what stocks we should invest in?
Correct. You should not do that.
Even when you ask it trivial stuff, it gets it wrong. And like,
Yep.
well, this is all bad. Like, what? I don't know. This is all bad. I don't know. I think they should just unplug this. Just unplug this. Wait 10 years and try again. Like, I don't know what else to say here. Big problem.
I do think that we'll find good uses for them. Like one of the uses could be like, if you've already written some code, it could quickly look for common bugs. I've seen it try to write code itself, and it's really bad at it. And I personally don't use any LLMs in my development process at all. But I could see the benefit of like, if I had already written a block of code and I just ask it like, hey, do you see any bugs in this? And it finds something, like that's a good thing. But also you need to like take what it says with a grain of salt, because it has a tendency to like invent bugs that aren't really there. So
that's fun.
it's gonna take a lot of work before it's like actually useful for, I think, really anything.
That's why I think we should unplug it. Wait 10 years, come back, try it again.
Yeah, apparently a lot of lawyers have been using LLMs, and LLMs have this tendency, I think we covered it on this show, to hallucinate legal cases and cite non-existent cases and precedent. And I can't imagine a judge would be really happy to find out that this thing that you're citing didn't actually happen.
Yeah, but what if we replace the judge with an LLM?
Oh God.
Well, they'll
Way
just be
worse.
Nazis, right? Nazi judges. Anyways,
Oh my God.
I will
Your
have
Honor,
to
I'd
say,
like to introduce this bad code into evidence.
I will have to say that just recently I've been working on a project and I used an LLM to help me write something, and it actually worked kind of well. I'll still need to do a lot of editing, but I was surprised how well it worked. I don't want to go into the details because it's a super secret that's coming up, but yeah.
Like for some things, it can actually be really good. I've used it to help write outlines for things.
Yeah.
Just like giving me ideas about like what to cover. Or like if I do write something, I'll ask it like, how can I improve this? What else could I talk about here? And it's generally pretty good about like that back and forth kind of conversation. It's just not good at like writing things on its own, especially code. It's just so bad at writing code.
I was going to say, especially humor. It is not funny at all. And
Well, don't worry.
it tries. It's bad.
Don't worry. If you give it bad code, it'll just tell you racist jokes.
Yeah.
What if
Luckily-
it writes its own bad code and then it turns into a racist because of it?
This could be like a self-fulfilling AI prophecy, right?
Well, the good news is Dave's job is safe because LLMs can't be as funny.
Oh, well, thank you. I'm glad. I just tell people that I'm mildly amusing.
Sometimes
much
it
better
is
than LLMs.
funny. Sometimes it is funny to see how unfunny LLMs can be.
Yeah. I'll say a trick that I used is I did not tell it to be funny. I just made the prompt in such a way that it had to be funny in its response, if that makes sense. And that kind of worked. I don't want to explain it any more than that, but hopefully that made sense.
Well,
Okay.
check this out. I guess don't add anything to training data. I don't know. Unplug it all. Unplug it all. Yeah. Burn it down.
Yep.
Try again later. Yep. Like, y'all can do this again the day that Peter Thiel dies. You can re-ramp up the AI hype cycle or whatever.
Well, don't worry. It's going to burn itself down by all the global warming it's causing.
Oh my God, I know. All right, what do you got next? H? What do you got next, Selfweed?
All right. An equally depressing one, maybe more depressing. I don't know. There are 15 Republican attorneys general who want to stop the government from providing poor people with affordable broadband internet. The FCC runs a historically bipartisan fund to help bring lower income families and schools broadband internet. Since Trumpism has infected the GOP, though, this goal is no longer bipartisan, and this fund was declared unconstitutional by the majority Republican stacked Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. The Supreme Court has decided to hear the case, and now 15 GOP AGs are urging the court to find this fund unconstitutional, which would mean no more internet for poor families and schools. The Supreme Court will hear oral arguments on March 26th, and I personally don't see how this helps anyone. This is disgusting. How getting rid of this would help anyone. I mean, this is clearly something that should be bipartisan.
It helps the broadband providers.
Does it?
No, it doesn't, because it means they have less business.
Huh.
It doesn't help broadband providers. It doesn't help poor people. It doesn't help the government. It doesn't help these AGs. It doesn't help anyone. It's just mean. It's just cruel for cruelty's sake.
Yeah, is this like getting broadband out to like rural areas, or is it just general, lower income households, or all of the above, or do you know?
The article didn't go into that. I would assume this is probably bringing broadband to rural areas and poorer urban areas. I'd assume there's not really a particular requirement for that.
Yeah, because usually it's, the broadband providers don't go out to the rural areas because they're much more expensive, right, to provide for. So there's usually government subsidies of some sort. There had been for a while to try and get them out there. They haven't been following the law very well, but that's beside the point.
So I'm going to go out on a limb here and say this is disproportionately going to impact people in rural communities, even if that's not the goal or the aim.
Probably.
Which seems like a bad move if those are your voters.
Yeah. What's worse is this is going to hurt schools. So like you're talking about like the kids who rely on their schools having internet, their schools are no longer going to have internet. And those are probably the same kids that go home to a family that can not afford broadband internet. So you're going to end up with these kids who don't have access to the internet at all.
Or have
it's
extremely limited access, because there may be times and places where they do, but they don't have reliable internet at home. And the school may have internet, but like I think that a lot of this probably goes towards like upgrading the infrastructure at the school versus like rolling it out to begin with, right? Because if the school had broadband or whatever that was adequate for the school 15 years ago, I would assume a program like this might offer money to help them upgrade their systems to get like more modernized, so that they have more bandwidth and maybe more Wi-Fi coverage, so the students can work better or whatever.
But yeah, like I can't see at all who this is going to help. It's just going to hurt everyone. So I really don't understand why this is happening, other than that it's cruel.
Maybe they want people to have dial-up so that the only sites that work are like the Drudge Report.
Maybe it's AOL doing this.
Yeah, maybe AOL is behind this.
Is this some sort of insidious plan by Elon Musk to get everybody, particularly in these rural areas, to use Starlink or something?
Maybe.
Well, that doesn't make a lot of sense, because that's like way more expensive. They're not going to be able to.
No, that makes sense then.
Yeah, they can't even afford it.
Well, that makes sense then. If it's way more expensive, yes, this of course makes sense. What do you mean?
Well, like this is a subsidy to help people who can't afford it anyway. So this subsidy could be going to him. So like it's not that this subsidy is going directly into the pockets of like, poor people. It's going to them to help them buy internet from an internet provider. So this money is helping these cable companies and these satellite companies. It's not just helping the families. It's also helping these internet providers. So like, I can't imagine why anyone who's running an internet provider would want this. This is horrible, losing access to this funding for your customers.
Like, I'm really surprised that, and this could turn out to actually be the same program. I'm really surprised they didn't go after the program, the cell phones for low income people. But for all I know, this is the same program, right?
Obama phones.
Yeah. And I don't think it is, but for all I know, this might be the same program. But you would think if it was the same program, that would have clearly been mentioned in the article. But I'm really surprised they didn't go after the mobile phones for people, for low income people, because that is literally they call it the Obama phone. And like, you would think that they would go after something like that first, but yeah, I don't know.
I think it is I think it is the same fund. It's called the Universal Service Fund, and it was meant to bring long distance telephone service initially. So I think it is the same fund, but I'm not sure about that.
Oh, well, I'm sure it's a much bigger expense than, the military. So you got to cut it. Well, that's horrifying. I don't know. I'm glad I have Sonic. But that doesn't help a person who doesn't have $50 a month in my neighborhood for Sonic. Thanks for checking out the what is this show called? This is How the Tech Are You? We try to do this show every week. And if you want to check out the rest of our stuff, you can go to echoplexmedia.com and click one of these two things or you will get measles. Have a great Tech and week.